Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Nate G219, to hell but back and better. It's December 7th, about 10 to 4 in the morning. I'm trying to get a quick one out to you guys before I have to go to work. Today's video is going to be about a man named Julius Garza, aka Casper. I want to show you guys how unfair the judicial system can be. Julius Garza had just turned 18 or 19 years old. This was in April 2012. He's from East Chicago, Indiana. Harborside, to be correct. Harborside, East Chicago, it's just a gang-ridden territory. The whole area is filled with gangs. Every block is a different set. It's about 10 minutes west of Chicago, and all of you guys know how Chicago is, or have at least heard about how Chicago is. We're close enough to where a lot of the violence dwindles over. Gary, Indiana, East Chicago, Hammond, they're not the greatest places all the time. But Julius Casper went and bought an AK-47 one day. I mean, he's a 2.6 gangster, so having an AK-47 is a pretty common thing. Having a legal AK-47 isn't very common. Especially registered. I mean, to have that in a gang, it's a pretty good thing to have legally. But him and Alejandro Sanchez, who was 21, Casper was either 18 or 19, they decided to drive from Harborside, which is, like I said, almost to Chicago, all the way to Valparaiso, so about a good 30-minute drive, to rob the weed plug. They knew a couple that was in Valparaiso. They had grown weed. That's what they did. They were weed growers. They were the weed plug. Instead of robbing them, Casper went in and killed both of them. Shot them both with his own registered AK-47. And, all right, I got some notes here, so I'm not going to be eye contact the whole time. So, he killed 2 people. Remember that. My buddy Ariel, at 13, was charged with a double homicide that he didn't do alone. Casper was facing between 90 and 130 years. So that's reasonable for a double homicide, especially as an adult. You mindfully went and purchased a weapon and went and killed these 2 people over some weed. Casper struck a plea deal, though. One hell of a plea deal. 45 years. I know a lot of you hear that 45 years and think, my God, that's not a plea deal. The state of Indiana, before 2014, 50%, day for day. Every day you do, you get credit for another day. It's called good time. Good time's automatic, or was automatic, at 50% at that time. So 45 years meant 22 and a half years on a double murder. A murder in Indiana's law says 45 to 65 years. That's what you can potentially be facing for a murder. 2 murders, you double that. He signed a plea agreement for 45 years. Rumors had been around that he was leaking information. I don't know if or anything that he said. I didn't talk to him too much. We were in the same dorm together for a while, and he tried to use his charges as an intimidation factor. Dude was a big-ass pussy. Casper is a pussy. And when I had went to Indiana State Prison, there was a lot of Latin folks there. By the way, Latin folks is a branch off of gangster disciples. They're under the 6-pointed star. There's numerous sets of Latin folks, more than 20, and they're everywhere over East Chicago area, parts of Chicago. They're everywhere. GDs have a few different sets, but Latin folks have a bunch of sets. I mean, you got Maniacs, you got 2-6s, you got Imperial Gangsters. There's a lot of them. Latin Dragons is another one. But anyways, back to the story. He copped a plea for 45 years. He was in county from 2012 to 2017. So he's really only got to do 17 years. It gets even better. You can get 1/3 of your sentence cut off with time cuts. If you go and get time cuts, 1/3 up to 4 years. So obviously he can't get an entire third of a sentence, but he can knock that down to 13 years for 2 people. And his situation personally doesn't piss me off or anything. I didn't know them. Was it right? No. But I'm sure there were a lot more circumstances to the situation to let him fight it and get a plea agreement for 45 years. But he was an adult and mindfully went and killed 2 people. How in the hell can you give a 13-year-old, or he was 15 when sentenced, but 13 at the time of the crime? I'm talking about my buddy Ariel, Ronald Sanford, my first video. If you haven't seen it, check it out. They gave him 170 years for a double murder that happened when he was 13, that they tricked him to sign a plea agreement on. Now, why in the hell can this piece of shit that went and mindfully killed, assassinated, executed 2 people over some weed, he's coming home. There's nothing that they can do to keep him in. When his out date comes, it's a wrap. He's out. He comes home. And he'll have to register as a violent offender and be on parole. But, big deal. He's not going to be in prison anymore. And I'll tell you one thing. He's not even allowed in the prisons up north. He had to go down south. They first transferred him to Indiana State Prison, which is about 30 minutes from where he lives. They had to move him down south near Indianapolis to Pendleton because of protection. They've got a hit out on him. The Latin folks says he's not allowed to walk freely. So it's SOS, smash on sight, kill on sight. But he checked in out of Indiana State Prison and took himself down south. So it's going to be hard for him to get into the programming and to get the time cut. So he might just have to do his 22 and a half years. I hope he does. He intentionally killed 2 people that just grew some weed. I can't say they were innocent people, but they weren't horrible criminals. There were some weed growers. Him and his buddy Alejandro Sanchez, who was 21 at the time, he only got 16 years. He was convicted of the burglary, which in most cases would have been felony murder. And I don't know why it wasn't, but it wasn't. They both got a pretty good deal. The victims were Jeffrey Tricka, who was 40, and 31-year-old Jennifer Trinka. Yeah, I said that right. The fact that Casper went into a very prominent, wealthy, and white area and did that and was able to get 45 years blows me away, because I know somebody that got 65 years for one body, and the dude was a child molester. The victim was a child molester. Granted, they didn't use that as motive, but my buddy has to serve 32 and a half years because of this murder. I'm not saying he's innocent at all, and what he did was horrible. But again, there was another guy with him, an older guy, Thomas Forbes. I'm going to put that name out there. Likes to tell on people. So I just wanted to show you how unjust and unfair the system can be sometimes. How can you give somebody that kills two people 45 years and let them come home, but you send and when he's an adult, he kills those people, but a child kills two people with another person. They can't even prove it was just him that did it or anything. They scared him into signing a plea agreement for 170 years. So, I don't know, that's just a thought. Well, this is another episode for you. They ain't hating it, you ain't making it.